What if a first love gave you everything you needed and still shattered you? That's the general idea behind my first comic story, Happily Ever After. I drew it for a contest, and I'm gonna tell you about the process, the obstacles I faced, and the solutions I found. If you watched my previous video, the timestamps are in the description. You can skip the info you remember if you do. The second I learned that the theme of the contest was first love, the initial ideas that instantly came to my mind were the ones about toxic relationships and emotional abuse. However, I wanted to draw something lighter in mood and wrote down a script for another story that I might continue as a different project in the future because it turned out too long for this contest, as the limit was 16 comic pages or 80 webtoon panels, and I wanted to draw much more than that. Thus, I came back to where I started and decided to draw a toxic first love comic anyway. In many cases, I create the characters from zero for every comic I draw. It simply doesn't occur to me that I have an original character idea before coming up with a story or world building first. This time, I only wanted to add glasses and make the main lead's appearance unique enough so they don't look like average self-insert characters. I tried not to add too many details because I knew I'd have to draw them numerous times in different poses and from different angles, yet I kept forgetting some of the very few details they had here and there, like glasses. Background characters are nearly non-existent in this comic, so I didn't even bother creating any more concepts at that point. I typed the story but kept losing track of the page limit, so I had to make a visual grid for the storyboard and divide the story into 4 phases. Sketching and inking everything was crazy hard. For some reason I kept trying to force myself to work in Clip Studio Paint, but every time I ended up back in Ibis Paint. In the end, I sketched and inked all 16 pages and the cover on my tablet. I also used CSP 3D models, which was difficult in the beginning, but I eventually figured that out. It took me 1 page a day for inking, but it was too slow. I started at the end of the April and only had 2 months for everything. However, I complicated the process so much that it was nearly impossible to draw more than that in a day. I drew the lines in vector on my tablet, exported them in PNG format and tried to resize them in CSP, all for the precious memory space. But it didn't work that way. The line looked blurry when made bigger. At some point, my husband asked me to share all the steps I do to ink 1 page so that we could find a solution together. Then he looked at me with horror and said, "All that for this?" He knew I didn't enjoy drawing the story because it's basically a trauma dump. So yeah, I ended up stressing much less and simply decided to ink everything in Ibis Paint using the original canvas size. I had 0 fucks to give about backgrounds, but the perfectionist in me won. Coloring was easy until I realized that the visuals looked dull without backgrounds, so I thought I'd just compensate by adding photos and 3D models in CSP. No, I didn't. I think I accidentally did more than that, as I probably should have. I ended up mixing 3D models, pre-made backgrounds, drawing my own backgrounds, and constructing some of them in both programs. The problem I often face is my inevitable gravitation towards my favorite colors, which leads me to the noticeable lack of diversity in my pages, so I had to try to choose more colors after all. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know if I did it right. What made the process easier is that I still had to focus on main characters most of the time, which is why I used the colors I assigned them in the concepts in the majority of cases. I chose the fonts from the very start when I was working on the storyboard and sketches. Also, some pages I thought would work with just mood effects and dialogue didn't. So I added more details, backgrounds, and colors last minute. What I learned from this experience is that I should always keep the original layers, because sometimes I needed to correct mistakes in the text bubbles that were already rasterized. Thankfully, I considered that in advance, which is why I still had the editable text balloon layers. Regarding the simplification of the drawing process, CSP is definitely the best option for me today. 3D models and pre-made assets saved me a lot of time and energy, especially during the art block days. However, it wasn't that hard to find ways to centralize the text in the bubbles and blink at the same time. By the end of those 2 months, I was burning out. My neurodivergent brain craved novelty I couldn't provide, so I bounced between small side projects, crocheting, collabs, random illustrations, etc. Drawing this comic meant reliving a story that hurt, but I still made something honest. And I'm kind of proud of it. If you want to see how it turned out, you can read Happily Ever After for free on Manga Draft, link in the description.